For this demonstration, I want to show you some techniques to use for your midterm project. Please remember this is just one way of creating the project for the midterm. Each of you will have a different take on this project. I've chosen to use a landscape option as opposed to a portrait. Before you begin creating your object for the midterm, you want to ensure that you download a file from a Google search that you will use as a templated image for your midterm. I've downloaded this into a folder called midterm, and you'll see that I have an image of the Eiffel Tower. This is what I'm going to use for my midterm template. I also have my scans, and it's important that you have the images that you will be using for the midterm already set and ready to go. In this case, I have an image of a CD, a key, and then a couple plants. Now what I need to do is open all of these items in Photoshop. But first, I need to also create a new document that will be my midterm. So I'm opening up Photoshop, and I'm going to go ahead and open my Eiffel Tower image that I downloaded from a Google search. I have that here, and you can see that I have the tab for that here as well. If you just forgive me, I just have to go to System Preferences here. I don't want to stop this to make sure that I can zoom in. Okay, and I do have that set. So I do have my Eiffel Tower already here, and you can see the tab for that's located right here. So I'm now going to create a new document by going up to File and New. I'm going to name this document Midterm, and I'll name it Midterm Demo since I'm doing this for you all. I want to make sure my width and height are 5 inches and my resolution is 300. Keep your color mode to RGB and 8-bit as your document settings and hit OK. What you'll have now is a tab with just a square blank document and a tab with your Eiffel Tower. The next step is to select my Move tool, which is located right here. And with my Move tool selected, I'm going to simply drag the Eiffel Tower image up to the tab for my midterm demo. But I'm going to keep my left mouse clicker depressed. So I'm clicking, dragging up to the tab, I'm holding down on my mouse, and then I'm just dragging down into the canvas. And what will happen is I'll actually get that Eiffel Tower image into the new document, and you can see it's here as a layer. I'm just going to rename this by double clicking on layer 1 and naming it template so that I know what that layer is. Now I'm going to ensure that up at my options bar in the top of my interface that the checkbox is checked for show transform controls. This will enable me to simply change the scale because I have this bounding box surrounding my document. If I hold down Shift, it will constrain the proportions so I won't stretch things out because I really want to keep this image looking like it should be looking and not either an Eiffel Tower that's too tall or too wide. I'm just moving the image so that it fits squarely on the page. You'll notice that I am losing some of the image, and that's okay. I mean, sometimes your image isn't going to be a perfect square. You're going to have to determine what parts of it you cut out. And then to complete this, I'm hitting Enter or Return on my keyboard, because whenever you transform, scale, rotate, distort, any of those transform options, you have to complete that transformation. All right, so now I have my templated image. I can, if I want to, change the opacity of that, perhaps make it a little lighter by going over to my layer palette and clicking on the word opacity with my left mouse button and just dragging that down just so it's not quite so opaque. but this will remain the bottom layer for the most part, so I'm happy with it here. The last step is to lock this template, and the reason being is that I want it locked so that I don't accidentally select it and make a change to it. So in my layer palette, I'm simply going to click on the lock button here, and that will just lock my layer so I won't hurt it in any way. I've got my main midterm image set up, so now I'm going to open the other images that I scanned earlier. So this includes my CD, key, and my 2 plant images. To select all of them, I'm simply holding down the Shift button on my keyboard and selecting the images and hitting open. So now I have all 4 images on tabs located at the top of my interface. I have the CD, the key, and the 2 plant images. Now that I've got all 4 images in Photoshop along with my demo file, what I want to do is I'm going to open up the CD image. I'm just clicking on the tab here at the top of my screen. And with my CD, although I've shown you the quick select tool in the past, which is this tool here, I'm going to actually talk about the marquee tool now. We have the rectangular marquee tool, which if I select it creates rectilinear selections. We have the elliptical marquee tool, which creates round selections. And for the sake of the CD, we're going to use the elliptical marquee tool because that makes the most sense. I'm just ensuring that I have it set to its normal default setting, which is here, which allows us to create a new selection. And this is in my options bar. Typically, if something goes wrong in Photoshop, I'd say 80% of the time it's an option that's kind of not quite where it needs to be. So I'm selecting my elliptical marquee tool, and I want to select my CD. To select from the center, because if you notice when I click and drag, it actually starts the circle from the top left, which isn't very helpful, especially in terms of circular shapes. I'm going to place the crosshairs of my mouse in the center of the CD as best as I can make it. And then I'm going to start clicking and dragging, but once I drag out that circle, still depressing the left mouse button, I'm going to hit my Option key or Alt on a Windows operating system, and that's going to allow me to start my selection from the center. If I want that to be a perfect circle, I'm going to hold down my Shift button. And now I'm just dragging it out until I get most of the CD without those funny edges. Pretty good. Now if I also want to cut out that center part of the CD, I can do so by coming up to my options bar here and clicking on this little button here, which is the Subtract from Selection option. I'm going to again line my crosshairs, and you'll notice a little minus symbol to the right of the crosshairs. I'm going to align my crosshairs in the center of the CD, and then I'm simply going to start to click and drag. And once I've started that circle, I'm going to hit my Option key and my Shift key on my keyboard to get a perfect circle. And there we go. So I've just subtracted the center of my CD from my CD. And now, just like with the Eiffel Tower, I can select my Move tool and I can literally just move this CD right into my midterm image. Voila, boom, there it is. And in my layer palette, I'm going to just make sure that I've got this named CD. Once I've completed that, I'm going to close that CD image because I don't need it.